what I believe has the potential to be the ideology of the future. Now, I begin with a quote that doesn't exactly characterize the situation, but it offers a good frame, a good departure point to try to explain what I see as the ideology of the future. The collective denial of unconscious mental activity has had many negative effects on society, one of which is decreased psychological literacy. If we don't understand that there are always unconscious forces at play within us, it makes it harder to understand almost everything about human behavior. Another consequence is a lack of compassion for phenomena like social contagion, conversion disorder. If there is no unconscious, then people with these conditions are faking it, are in medical terms malingering if it is framed this way. Ability to empathize or any deeper understanding of symptoms fly out the window. The extreme pendulum swing isn't any better though. If one side says, "You are faking it," then the other side will say, "This is 100% real and you are a terrible person for not believing it." The only way out of this no-win situation is through the acknowledgement of unconscious mental life. Once it is a given that all of us are motivated by emotions, beliefs, wishes, and needs that lie underneath the surface of our awareness at any given moment, something like conversion disorder not only makes sense, it is possible to see that the person suffering isn't consciously aware that their illness isn't physical but psychological. Now, I think that though this is not perfect, this helps us to get a frame to understand the nature of the new ideology. The new ideology, as I see it, is a kind of will to power. It amounts to a denial of involuntary suffering. It puts forward the notion that all conditions that humans find themselves in are ultimately the result of the choices made by those humans. So, one of the modalities that this ideology is rising through, though I believe that this modality will deny this aspect of its function, but it is positive psychology. And positive psychology is a branch of psychology that focuses on the study of what makes life worth living and how people can thrive. It emphasizes the positive aspects of human experience, such as happiness, well-being, and flourishing, rather than just treating mental illness and dysfunction. This field looks at strengths, virtues, and factors that contribute to a fulfilling and meaningful life. Fair enough, I think that positive psychology is indeed important. But approached from the vantage point of looking at the positive psychology can very quickly become a form of toxic positivity. It can very quickly become a form of denial. And I think that what is emerging through positive psychology is an ideology of self-efficacy. Self-efficacy refers to an individual's belief in their ability to successfully execute the actions required to achieve specific goals. It plays a crucial role in how we approach tasks, challenges, and goals. People with high self-efficacy are more likely to set challenging goals, persist through difficulties, and recover from setbacks. So this new ideology that is emerging is an ideology that denies involuntary suffering. It is an ideology that denies the nature of objective biological states or conditions that an individual can suffer. It denies socioeconomic conditions. Essentially, this ideology is an exercise in denial. But the reason I believe it is so incredibly dangerous is because the studies that are being conducted within this domain, the biased studies that are giving results that demonstrate or speak to the veracity of these ideologies, these studies end up enshrining a kind of authority within these structures, within the ideology of this positive psychology. So that what happens is we begin to believe that the sufferer is to blame for his suffering, that all suffering is voluntary, that all poverty is voluntary. And this is the ideology that the oppressive forces in society want to propagate, because it empowers a kind of plutocratic structure. It empowers a kind of meritocracy structure. And what that really means is that individuals who have had a better experience of development, who have had greater existential luck, greater social luck, end up functioning at very high levels. So what this ideology does is it essentially prejudices these individuals who have had a good experience of development, a good experience of the geography or the ethnicity into which they were born, thereby giving them a positive experience of existence. What they have done through this new ideology is they have found a way to normalize this experience, to take the experience of a lucky individual and to say that if your existence does not match up to the kind of experience that this lucky individual has had, then you, the sufferer, have done something wrong. The responsibility falls back on a failure of your will to power. This is what these ideologies are essentially pushing, even though they would deny this. But this is really where they lead, and it's destructive because it denies the reality of involuntary suffering. And once you deny the reality of involuntary suffering, you deny reality. And once you deny reality, you start imposing moralistic delusions on humans. Essentially, where these ideologies lead is to a place of kicking a sufferer while the sufferer is down. And these ideologies, they give the advocates of these positions a kind of authority by which to engage in this degradation of people who are already suffering. It gives the advocates of this position an authority to say that they are right and that these individuals who are suffering have failed in their will to power. Therefore, they arrive at a derogatory conclusion or definition of these individuals. It is based on the invalidation of suffering, by exalting a privileged experience to the status of normalcy. That's what it is based on. That the privileged experience is taken to be the healthy experience, the uniform experience. And if an individual's life has fallen away from that due to poverty, due to mental conditions, whatever it might be, whatever kind of suffering, adversity has impaired the quality of the individual's life, this is simply explained as a failure on the part of the individual. Now, I think it should be stated that the idea that positive psychology or self-efficacy is entirely useless, that is false. I'm not claiming that, and neither am I claiming that there's no such thing as conditions, human conditions of suffering that could be lessened through particular activities. I'm not making the claim that every kind of suffering is a form of involuntary suffering. But nonetheless, it's very important that we believe in and we understand the reality of involuntary suffering. It's very important that we cultivate societies that make room for and have compassion for conditions that are involuntary. This is a mark and a measure upon us as a society. And what frightens me about this rising ideology is that it is set up to completely invalidate human suffering by contrasting it, by biasing privileged social conditions, by biasing privileged experiences of existence, and then contrasting those privileged experiences against adverse experiences. And I think the net result of this at the end of the day is that it will lead to the institutional defunding and the social regression of psychological mediation on the case of the sufferer. That it will give a justification for a kind of libertarian fascism or cruelty that seeks to withdraw the social as coming to the aid of the individual, which is one of the most legitimate reasons why we establish societies in the first place. And I believe that this ideology has the political potential to defund and to destroy this compassionate, intelligent mediation process in society. That what will be sacrificed will be the institutional care and the social care that is exercised toward individuals based upon these precepts that everything is reduced to choice. Everything is reduced to an exercise of willpower, that everything is a matter of making the right choices, that our conditioning doesn't matter, that our experience of existence doesn't matter, that our genetics don't matter, that our biology doesn't matter. There is no such thing as involuntary suffering in this model when it achieves its highest ideological status of function. It will function in the hands of conservatives and fascists as a justification to defund vital social supports to individuals. This, I think, is a problem because it can lead to the proliferation of a kind of state tyranny that makes human existence a living hell, because it removes the compassion from society. Now, this has just been the most generalized outline of what I see as a potential threat in an emergence of a positive ideology structure that functions according to an instrumental rationality. And this is not exhaustive. It would require more analysis, it requires more thought, but it is worth thinking about. When we see a critical modality emerge against a particular social position, we have to be intelligent enough to ask the question as to whether or not the negation of that social function through this criticism is going to ultimately bring about better social conditions. If it's not going to bring about better social conditions, then there's a very likelihood that the criticism that we are exercising is a functional nihilism, because it's going to impoverish social conditions. So we have to become aware of and learn how to ask this question in the analysis of our own skepticism as to the value of the skepticism we wield in tearing down society. We have to be able to understand that the criticism, if it is a good criticism, should hopefully help us move in the direction of a higher function, in the direction of the cultivation of a higher quality. And if this is lacking, then it could be the case that our criticism is socially dangerous and regressive.